Hey, it's your friend Joseph Craven here for another episode of The Numbers Game presented by Running Out the Clock. This, of course, is our weekly update on just the statistics, the numbers that go into all of the box scores from the week before, the league leaders, the rankings, all of just the raw stats and numbers that you might want to be aware of as the season goes on. Numbers, of course, don't really tell much of the full story, but it is still fascinating to look at in more detail and just, it can tell you quite a bit. Numbers do lie, of course, but it's worth looking at. So first and foremost, let's look at the scores themselves from Week 8 in the SEC season. Wow, hard to believe it's already into Week 9. I'm sure that if your team that you support is doing well, you're sad to know that the season is winding down. If your team's not doing so hot, then you're excited to be getting into other things. I, for one, am excited to really ramp up production on 40 Minutes of Hell, my basketball podcast, now that the NBA season has started. There's a little shameless plug. Arkansas defeated Tulsa 23-0, blanking the Golden Hurricanes. This one was, let's just look at the stats. We do try to avoid any sort of opinion here in the numbers game. But this one was interesting because the Razorbacks actually went with freshman Connor Noland under center for most of the game. He went 10 of 16 for 124 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Cole Kelly did throw 3 passes, only completing one of them for 7 yards. Running back Rakeem Boyd added 22 carries for 99 yards, continuing his breakout year for the Razorbacks. Behind him, quarterback Cole Kelly had 5 carries for 27 yards. Running back Chase Hayden, had 9 carries for 43 yards. And Malik Williams, a freshman from Florida for the Razorbacks, had 9 carries, 23 yards, but he added 1 touchdown on the ground. Through the air, there were only 2 touchdowns scored. So through the air, not a huge amount to report. Tight end Cheyenne O'Grady had 2 catches for 35 yards, but behind that, there's a whole lot of players for the Razorbacks that had 1 catch. The person who saw the most targets actually was running back Rakeem Boyd, who had 3 catches for 14 yards. But the 1 touchdown through the air went to tight end Grayson Gunter. It was 1 7-yard touchdown reception. So the Razorbacks still adjusting to that Chad Morris offense, but the defense able to blank Tulsa to hold on to anytime in modern college football, you can stop the other team from scoring anything at all. That's a huge victory right there. So 23-0 in favor of Arkansas. Auburn defeated Ole Miss 31-16. Here are the statistics as well. I just realized also at this point in recording that I skipped over the full scoreboard rundown before getting into the box scores, and I'm just going to roll with it. That's just how this week's going to be. On the losing side, Jordan Ta'amu, the Ole Miss quarterback, went 27 of 46 for 324 yards and 1 touchdown. On the ground, Scotty Phillips, their star running back, had 17 carries for only 59 yards, a little less than his normal average as far as rushing goes. He only had 3.5 yards per attempt. Jordan Ta'amu added 19 attempts for 43 yards on the ground. And Isaiah Woolard had 3 carries for 21 yards to be the, as far as averages go, the most productive running back for the Rebels. A.J. Brown had a whopping 10 receptions for 155 yards and a touchdown. DeMarcus Lodge added 5 more for 84 yards. But other than that, perhaps the effect of missing DK Metcalf, the nasty wideouts, did not have very productive days. Braylon Sanders with 3 catches for 18 yards. Woolard and Scotty Phillips had a pair of catches apiece out of the backfield, but nothing really notable outside of the performances by Brown and Lodge for Ole Miss. For Auburn, Jarrett Stidham had 13 of 22 passing, 215 yards and a touchdown, a decent 9.8 yards per pass average. Jatarvius Whitlow led the way on the ground, 19 carries for 170 yards, no touchdowns now, though, however. Sean Shivers added 10 carries for 45 yards. Cam Martin, who was supposed to maybe get a lot of carries for the Tigers before the season started, really not seeing much action in general, only 4 carries for 18 yards. But it was that speedy wide receiver that they love to use on sweep runs. Anthony Schwartz, the former track star, set. I think he has a national record as far as 100-meter, something like that, for high school age. I could be wrong, but very, very interesting player there, Schwartz. He had one 16-yard touchdown carry. On the ground, for the most part, the yardage came through Whitlow and a little bit through Shivers, but Malik Miller wandered in to be the goal line guy. He's a 5'11", 216-pound running back that they wanted to use right on the goal line. He had 6 carries for 11 yards, but 2 touchdowns on the ground. Through the air, the lone receiving touchdown actually went to running back Whitlow. He had 4 catches for 38 yards, and of course that 1 touchdown. As far as yardage goes, Seth Williams, another one of those young, speedy guys that Auburn likes to try to take advantage of. He had 2 catches for 83 yards, and Darius Slayton 2 catches for 62 yards as well. Number 1 Alabama defeated Tennessee 58-21. On the losing side, we actually saw quite a bit of Keller Christ. Christ attempted 15 passes, completing 9 of them, 164 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their normal starter, Jarrett Guarantano, went 5 of 10 for 63 yards before having to leave due to injury, and probably held out just to be safe against Alabama, because by that point in time, there's only so long that you really hang on to a game against Alabama. You want to make sure that if you've got a budding star in a quarterback in Guarantano, you don't want to risk anything there. As far as rushing goes, Tim Jordan carried the ball 14 times for 50 yards, 3.6 yards per carry, and Ty Chandler 9 times for 21 yards, 2.3 yards per carry. Hard to move the ball against that Alabama Crimson Tide. However, Juwan Jennings, wide receiver, had 6 catches for 102 yards through the air. Pretty good. Ty Chandler was able to get 3 catches for 39 yards and 1 touchdown coming out of the backfield. Another touchdown through the air was added by wide receiver Tyler Bird, a 1 reception on the day for 20 yards, and that score. On the other side, Tua Tagovailoa went 19 of 29 for 306 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts came in 2 of 3 for 21 yards. He threw 1 interception. Very, 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 very rare for any Alabama quarterback, but especially for Jalen Hurts to be credited with an interception. For the Crimson Tide, as expected, they had about half the team listed with a rushing attempt in the box score. Josh Jacobs had 12 carries for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brian Robinson Jr., 13 carries for 60 yards. And then we get to the guys that we expect to have bigger performances, like Najee Harris, who had 9 carries for 50 yards. Despite being credited with an interception, Jalen Hurts did have 2 carries for 24 yards and a touchdown. Damian Harris had 3 carries, 12 yards, 1 touchdown as well. Tua Tagovailoa only attempted 1 rush for 6 yards on the day. And perhaps the strangest turn of events for the Crimson Tide so far on the season, somebody other than Jerry Jeudy led the team in receiving yards. That's actually wide receiver, a freshman from Houston, Texas, Jalen Waddle. 4 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. However, Jeudy not terribly far behind him. 5 catches, 72 yards, 1 touchdown. Henry Ruggs III comes in third with 3 receptions, 65 yards, 1 touchdown. Irv Smith Jr., 5 catches, 50 yards, 1 touchdown as well for the Alabama Crimson Tide as they continue their winning streak. Missouri opened it up full throttle against Memphis as the game went on to win 65-33. Very notably, star running back for Memphis, Darrell Henderson, was injured. The nation's leader in rushing yards only ran the ball 4 times for 15 yards, caught 1 pass for 20 yards, then was knocked out of the game in the first quarter, unable to return. So that's a notable non-conference stat to update you on. Let's look at the winning Missouri Tigers to see how they did. Drew Lock, 23 of 29 for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. Drew Lock continuing to find amazing success, perhaps against inferior competition, but I think Memphis is a pretty good team all in all, so that's just my opinion here. Taylor Powell, freshman from Fayetteville, Arkansas, stepped in for Missouri, threw the ball 3 times one completion for 23 yards. On the ground, Larry Roundtree III carried the ball 9 times for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging 13 yards per carry. 2 of those touchdowns were on 2-yard runs, but he did have one 59-yard touchdown run in the third quarter. His partner in the backfield, Demaria Crockett, 13 carries, 56 yards, 1 touchdown. Tyler Beatty added 7 carries for 41 yards, and Drew Lock actually had 4 carries for 36 yards. The go-to receiver, receiver go-to for Missouri. I'm struggling. The go-to receiver for Missouri so far on the season has, of course, been Jalen Knox. He had a good game, 5 catches, 104 yards, and 1 touchdown. But the star through the air, without question, was the man with the name that the announcers refused to try to pronounce for most of the game, calling him Albert O, which might be incredibly insensitive of them, but it is a long and fun Nigerian name. Albert Akweogbunam. I did like the story that they told about Akweogbunam's father being, he moved to America from Nigeria. Their last name, I believe, means evil cannot stand against us. I believe that is the translation. I might have gotten that a little bit wrong, but either way, that is the coolest name I have ever heard in my life. The tight end for the Tigers, he's a big dude. I think a solid 6'5", at least 250, 255 pounds. He had 6 receptions for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns. Go ahead, have yourself a day, Albert. Evil cannot stand against you. Hey, if you like statistics, you're just going to hate going through the Mississippi State versus LSU game. It was a 19-3 game where nobody got anything going. Let's look at the Bulldogs first and foremost. Nick Fitzgerald went 8 of 24 for 59 passing yards and 4 interceptions. Absolutely abysmal day for the Mississippi State signal caller. On the ground, however, he did rush the ball 23 times for 131 yards. Kind of makes you wonder why in the world he was attempting 24 passes to begin with. Joe Moorhead. I'm sorry. No opinions in the numbers game. I'm done. Running back Kylan Hill only rushed the ball 8 times for 42 yards, Joe Moorhead. And Aries Williams only rushed the ball 6 times for 28 yards, Joe Moorhead. The Bulldogs actually averaged good rushing statistics, 5.7 yards per carry for Fitzgerald, 5.3 for Hill, 4.7 for Aries Williams. Astounding that there were even 24 passing attempts, Joe Moorhead. As you would expect, nothing to report through the air for Mississippi State. Let's look at the LSU Bayou Bengals going up against the top defense in the country in Mississippi State. So LSU's offense just had to be efficient, which is kind of the story of what they were going to do. There was, notably, by the end of the first half, if I remember correctly, LSU was averaging about less than 1 yard per play. So, like I said, this is not the game to go over if you're a statistics fan. Joe Burrow completed 16 of 28 passes for 129 yards and 1 interception. Nick Brissett on the ground, 17 carries, 57 yards, 1 touchdown. That 1 touchdown came off of course, in the beginning of the game, I believe it was like a 2-yard run off of an interception return. 3.4 yards per carry. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 16 carries, 46 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. Through the air, the man receiving the most amount of targets was D. Anderson. I'm sorry, the most amount of receptions, D. Anderson. 3 catches for 29 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 2 catches for 22 yards. Jamar Chase, 2 catches, 20 yards. Their go-to receiver, Justin Jefferson, 3 catches for only 18 yards as he was shadowed by one of the better corners in the conference, Cameron Dantzler, the whole game. Hideous game. Let's never talk about LSU versus Mississippi State again. It was, of course, field goal fest. Finally, Kentucky held off Vanderbilt 14-7. Kentucky was hoping for a better performance coming out of a bye week. Vanderbilt trying to claw and fight and scrape their way through. Let's look at the statistics for Vanderbilt first. Kyle Shermer, 15 of 23 through the air, 216 yards and 1 touchdown. On the ground, you had a surprising leader on the ground. For most, I feel like, of the season, it's been Kyrie Blasingame for the Commodores. However, it was Jamari Wakefield who led the way with 19 carries, 74 yards. Through the air, C.J. Bowler had 2 catches for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. That touchdown was a 29-yard touchdown. So most of his yardage actually came on one particular pass, and then his other catch, which was the touchdown catch, was almost 30 yards itself. So Bowler making the most out of those two catches. Their go-to target, Jared Pinkney, the tight end, only had 3 catches for 44 yards. Kyrie Blasingame added 3 catches out of the backfield for 40 yards. And go-to main wide receiver, Khalija Lipscomb, had 5 catches, but for only 28 yards. As mentioned, Kentucky, not much better. Their quarterback, Tyler Wilson, 3 of 9 for 18 yards and a touchdown, only attempting 9 passes in the game, which did end up being a victory. Joe Moorhead. All right, Benny Snell Jr. on the ground once again, carrying the ball as often as humanly possible. 32 carries, 169 yards and a touchdown, 5.3 yards per carry, probably one of his better averages on the season, despite having the 32 carries. Quarterback Tyler Wilson added 12 carries for 91 yards as well. That one touchdown catch went to the only Kentucky receiver that had any catches on the day. That's right. All 3 of Tyler Wilson's completions went to Lynn Bowden Jr. Bowden had 18 yards and a touchdown. Kentucky beating Vanderbilt with only 18 passing yards. What does this mean for the college football rankings? Well, I'll tell you. It means that nothing has really changed in the top spot. Alabama is still number 1 in the AP and the coaches' polls. There's a lot of people moving up in the rankings here. Clemson is now up to number 2. Notre Dame up to number 3, which means that LSU has moved up to number 4 in both polls. Georgia is at number 7 in the AP, number 6 in the coaches' poll. The Florida Gators have cracked the top 10 in the AP poll. They have moved up 2 spots. 6-1 on the year. They're now at number 9. In the coaches' poll, they are still at number 11, but that is a spot up from where they were. Kentucky moves up 2 spots to number 12 in the AP poll. They move up 3 spots to number 14 in the coaches. Texas A&M, the Aggies, are number 16, moving up 1 spot in the AP. 17, moving up a spot in the coaches. And that is it for the SEC teams in the top 25. Mississippi State, of course, dropped out of the AP poll. They are still receiving 2 AP votes. Auburn's receiving 5 AP votes, and that is it as far as receiving votes there. On the coaches poll side of things, Mississippi State still receiving 18 coaches poll votes. Auburn, 13. South Carolina, 5. The SEC players of the week are as follows. Tua Tagovailoa, I'm about to get fired or murdered. The Alabama quarterback, the preseason Heisman Trophy winner, accounted for 312 yards of total offense. I like that they say that considering he had 6 rushing yards. So it's not really that impressive. But he did have 4 touchdowns while playing only 50 plays in the game. 306 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, of course, including 9 straight completions before leaving the game. He still has not played a snap in the 4th quarter this season, which is, he only played 1 drive in the 3rd quarter against the Valiant. Why did they give him this award? Like, I feel like the offensive player of the week should have been like the Alabama defense. Can the Alabama defense have been the offensive player of the week if he didn't even play but like half the game? How do you give an offensive player of the week award to someone that only played half a game? Like, are they saying it's because like that itself is impressive? I mean, I guess that's true. It's just, I don't know. I believe there is a rule where you cannot have a week go by without a Alabama player in the players of the week. Grant Delpit for LSU, the safety there, their leading tackler, is the defensive player of the week. He had 10 tackles, 1 sack, a pair of interceptions in the victory over Mississippi State. The LSU defense was stout themselves there, held Mississippi State to only 260 total yards and 2 of 14 on 3rd down opportunities. Along with him, no surprise here that the special teams player of the week is kicker Cole Tracy of LSU. He had to kick often in the game and made all of them. He kicked 4 field goals, made all of them, of course. He has a streak going of 12 straight field goals without a miss. In this game, he hit from 25, 38, 29, and 40 yards away. He is the first player in LSU history to kick 9 field goals in a 2-game span. He's now 21 of 23 for the season. He hasn't missed a kick inside the 50-yard line so far this year. His 2 misses on the year are from 53 yards away. He also leads the nation in field goals. So good on LSU to have yet another reliable kicker, because as traditionally, LSU offense, not really all that amazing. LSU really is the same team like every year. It's really remarkable. Freshman of the week was wide receiver Jalen Knox of Missouri. He had those 5 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown to help spark Missouri to that 65-33 win over Memphis. His touchdown was a 44-yard reception. This is his second 100-yard receiving game of the season. It should be noted that Knox is second in the SEC, 5th nationally among all freshmen, with 384 receiving yards through these, 8 games, 7 games so far on the season. He has 20 receptions on the year, 3 touchdowns. I think earlier in the episode I messed up and called him the go-to receiver so far on the year. Their main receiver, of course, has been Emmanuel Hall, who is hurt, which means Jalen Knox has had to become a big-time go-to receiver for them in his absence. So I was trying to say there. Which also plays into why Albert Okwuegbunam has been such a good performer. Why was he not Offensive Player of the Week? He's a tight end that had like 160 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Anyway, Offensive Lineman of the Week, George Asafo-Adjei from Kentucky. He graded at 89% in the win over Vanderbilt. 3 knockdown blocks, 23 blocks at the point of attack. He did not have an assignment error, any penalties, and he did not allow any sacks or pressures. The defensive lineman of the week was defensive lineman Nick Coe of Alabama. Oh my gosh, I did it again. He's from Auburn. He recorded 5 tackles, including 3.5 quarterback sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss, which are the same thing in case you guys were wondering. That was the most sacks by an Auburn player since 2006 when Quentin Groves got 3 against Florida. All of his tackles were either on 3rd or 4th down stops. And that's, of course, notable because he was part of an Auburn defense that held that Ole Miss offense to only 25 points and 103 yards less than their season average entering the game. All right, a quick rundown of the statistical leaders on the year so far for the SEC. At this point in time, you can pretty much expect that these guys are not really going to change. They are pretty much who they are, and let's still look at them anyway. Top 5 passers so far: Jordan Ta'amu of Mississippi, 2,622 yards. Tua Tagovailoa in second place with 2,066 yards. Drew Lock, 1,979 yards. Kyle Shermer of Vanderbilt, 1,845, and Kellen Mond with a clean 1,800 in 5th place. As far as touchdowns go, Tua leads the way with 25. Drew Lock and Jordan Ta'amu are tied in second with 16. Felipe Franks of Florida has 15. And Jake Fromm of Georgia, 13 to round out the top 5. Benny Snell is on top of the pack as far as rushing yards go. He has 893. Number 2, Travion Williams of A&M, 798. Scotty Phillips of Ole Miss creeping up right behind him, 782. Nick Brossette of Louisiana State University, 697 yards, and quarterback Nick Fitzgerald still hanging in the top 5 with 644 rushing yards. Snell, Brossette are still the top 2 in terms of rushing attempts. 160 attempts on the season for Snell, 151 for Brossette. As far as touchdowns go, Brossette has that lead with 10. There's a tie in second place. Scotty Phillips and Benny Snell both have 9. Travion Williams and Joshua Jacobs, that's a guy from Alabama, have 8 behind him. And Nick Fitzgerald and Larry Roundtree are tied with 7 touchdowns. Elijah Holyfield of Georgia leads the way with 7.5 yards per carry. Keyshawn Vaughn of Vanderbilt, 6.9. Kylan Hill of Mississippi State in third with 6.8 yards per carry. Rakeem the Dream Boyd of Arkansas, 6.7 yards per carry. And Damian Harris of Alabama, 6.4 yards per carry. As far as receiving yards go, A.J. Brown is in the top spot, 805 receiving yards. Jerry Jeudy of Alabama was 777. He hit the all-lucky 7s. He would have gotten quite a reward from Kate Sith's limit break in Final Fantasy VII with that, right? That seems right. Collegiate Lipscomb of Vanderbilt, 588 yards to be in third place. DK Metcalf still holding on to a top 5 spot despite being out for the rest of the season, 569 yards. And DeMarcus Lodge of Ole Miss is in the top 5 with 550 yards. Jerry Jeudy still has the top spot as far as receiving touchdowns goes, though, with 10. Henry Ruggs, the third, second place with 7. Jay Sternberger of Texas A&M, their star tight end, and Collegiate Lipscomb of Vanderbilt are tied in third place with 6. And then we actually have a big tie in 5th place. These are all the players that have 5 touchdowns on the year. Here we go. Irv Smith Jr. of Alabama, DK Metcalf of Ole Miss, Riley Ridley of Georgia, Brian Edwards of South Carolina, Albert Ogwugbunam of Missouri, and A.J. Brown of Ole Miss. Albert, evil cannot stand against you. Your league leaders for total tackles on defense, Jordan Griffin of Vanderbilt leads the way with 86, Dejon Harris of Arkansas, 82, Devin White of LSU, 76, Deshaun Davis of Auburn, 72, and Mohamed Sanogo of Ole Miss with 65 in 5th place there. As far as sacks go, Montez Sweat of Mississippi State still has 9 to be in the top spot. Josh Allen of Kentucky and Isaiah Buggs of Alabama are tied behind him with 8. Ja'Kai Polite of Florida has 7 in the 4th place spot, and Nick Coe of Auburn and Christian Miller of Alabama are tied with 6. Due to his multiple interception performance, Grant Delpit of Louisiana State University has 5 interceptions to lead the conference in that category. These following players are all behind him with 3. John Battle of LSU, Darius West of Kentucky, Rashad Fenton of South Carolina, Ryan Pooley of Arkansas, and Savion Smith of Alabama. Finally, passes defended. The same sort of names hanging out at the top of the list. DeAndre Baker, the star corner of Georgia, has 8 passes defended. Javaris Davis of Auburn, Christian Fulton of Louisiana State, and Cameron Dantzler of Mississippi State all tied with 7 passes defended. And in 5th place are all of these ties here. 6 passes defended. Here are the names. Christian Holmes of Missouri, Jarquez McClellan of Arkansas, DeMarcus Acey of Missouri, Noah Igbinogine of Auburn, and Trevon Diggs of Alabama. That's going to wrap up this episode of The Numbers Game for Week 8. I'm Joseph Craven. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again next week. As always, feel free to listen to 40 Minutes of Hell, the basketball podcast produced by me and Ro Hunter. We're looking at picking things up this week if time allows. I've been very busy. I'll see you guys later. Bye.